again, BookTube. Welcome to Quiet Calm Books, a quiet, safe space to talk about books. Today I have a mini book haul for you guys. It's only 5 books, hence the mini, but the covers for these first 3 books are so aesthetic and I can't wait to show them off to you guys. If you're a fantasy fan and you ever find yourself scrolling Pinterest looking for aesthetic books to add to your collection, then you probably stumbled across these gorgeous guidebooks. These are the Adams Media Myths, Legends, and Lore books. Each one is dedicated to a particular fantasy creature, but the 3 that I have in my collection are fairies, dragons, and angels. So I'm gonna show off the covers of each of these books to you guys and probably do a bit of a flip through. These books obviously cover the histories of fairies, dragons, and angels respectively, and they explore poetry, traditions, folk tales from all different countries and cultures, and they even include some modern interpretations as well. I decided to get these books in particular out of all the ones in the collection because fairies, dragons, and angels are 3 types of fantasy creatures that I personally use often in my own creative writing, and I know that I can always reimagine their histories and their lore for my purposes, which I am doing somewhat, but I just thought it would be good for me to know what lore is already out there. The first one that I have is Fairies by Skye Alexander, and this is the only one out of the 3 that I've actually started to read. This book and all of these books are hardcover, so they're fairly sturdy. There's a little bit of wear on the back, but I've been carrying it around for a while and it's held up pretty well.
The cover is this pretty purple pastel color with some texture to it. And then on the front we also have these very delicate storybook style illustrations of 2 little fairies facing each other and holding butterflies. And then of course in the center we have the title in this pretty gold lettering. The pages are also textured, which I think is cool. And then the back has the synopsis and a more detailed fairy illustration.
As far as the actual content of this book goes, this is definitely not a book for little girls. Skye Alexander treats fairies very seriously as a tool for writing and as a spiritual belief for some people. She talks about events like the Fairy Human Relations Congress, which I had never even heard about and was very interesting to read about. I honestly didn't expect this book to take fairies so seriously. I'm very glad that it did, and I'm definitely going to keep those spiritual beliefs in mind for my own writing. The first half of this book goes into the nitty-gritty of the different types of fairies, their possible powers, and their relationship with humans, and also includes fairy-related poems, quotes, and illustrations interspersed throughout. The second half of the book looks into the fairies and fantasy worlds created by popular authors and also breaks them down by continent. I really appreciate that this book covered fairies from Africa, Asia, and Australia instead of just focusing on European fairies. Fairies are an important part of so many cultures, not just Europe, and Asian fairies are especially fascinating to me, so I was so glad that they were covered in depth. Overall, I found this book to be very informative so far, and I feel like each little paragraph gives a good sampler of fairy lore without being overwhelming. Okay, so on to the next Adams Media book. This one is Dragons by Doug Niles with a foreword by Margaret Weiss.
Out of the 3 covers, I think this one is probably my favorite. I really like the tan color choice. I think it makes the book look very timeless and authentic. And then the maroon color that they chose for the dragon illustrations. Reminds me of like a leather engraving. And then the pages are the same texture. And the back doesn't have any illustrations, it's pretty basic.
I haven't read this one yet, like I said, but it's similar to the Fairies book, and then it has a separate chapter for the dragon mythology of all different countries. We have dragons of antiquity, dragons of East Asia, of India and South Asia, of European cultural myth and other cultural myths. Then in the 3rd part, we have a history of dragons in more contemporary mediums like film and video games. and this one also has plenty of dragon poems, quotes, and traditional tales. I feel like dragons usually aren't dismissed as something childish in the same way that fairies tend to be, first because dragons are just really cool, and also because of the popularity of adult fantasy like The Witcher, Game of Thrones, and Lord of the Rings. But if there is any question about that, then you can just look at some of the fierce illustrations in this book and be assured that it's not meant for kids. The final book that I have from this collection is Angels, Traditions, Stories, and Miracles by Isabella Anderson. The cover is this airy light sky blue that fades up into clouds, and then the title has an angel illustration flying over it. I'm not sure how I feel about this one yet, just by flipping through it. It mostly talks about angels from the Christian tradition and uses the Bible as a source, although there is some mention of angels from other holy books. Like I said, I haven't read it yet, so I can't really judge its contents based on first glance, but I am very excited to read it. I am very interested in the different types of angels and archangels, and an angel's true form is something that varies widely in artworks and literature, so I'm really excited to see how an angel's true form is portrayed in this book. This book also includes plenty of traditional artwork and poetry, and there's even a whole section on communicating and healing with the angels, so this topic is obviously treated very seriously as well. Unfortunately, I didn't see a section for more contemporary interpretations of angels, like the ones in TV shows like Supernatural and Good Omens, and that's something that I really would have loved to see included. That is it for my Adams Media haul, so I will move on to my last two books, and these are just some Japanese lit that I ordered. It's been kind of hard to maintain my fluency in Japanese over the summer, so I decided to branch out and do some learning on my own by reading books, which is something that I love to do anyway. I ordered these two books from Amazon Japan, and they arrived surprisingly quickly. These are Japanese middle school level books, so they have some more difficult kanji and vocabulary from what I might have been used to, but they also always have the furigana above the kanji, so you don't have to spend hours trying to figure out what some new radical is. So the first one I have is Sadako Senbatsuru, which is the traditional Japanese story Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes. I haven't actually started reading this one in Japanese yet, but I did read the English translation when I was much younger, so I'm very excited to finally be able to read this in Japanese. And I do know the premise, so I can tell you the premise. It is about a little girl named Sadako who has cancer and starts folding paper cranes in the hopes of making herself well again, because there's a Japanese legend that says you can cure sickness if you fold 1,000 paper cranes. The second book that I got from Amazon Japan is a short bluebird novel called Yuzu no Dobutsu Karute, and if you study Japanese and you haven't heard of Aoitori Bunko, I hadn't either, but this one has been great so far. Basically, it's about a 5th grade girl who goes to live with her uncle, a veterinarian, and helps him take care of all the dogs and cats. Obviously, it's a fairly simplistic premise. It is a children's book, but it's absolutely adorable. The illustrations are so cute. Absolutely adorable. There was a little Aoitori Bunko bookmark in there. If you are studying Japanese, I've loved reading the Aoitori Bunko so far, and the furigana is absolutely a lifesaver. There's so many different Aoitori Bunko. Some of them are just English or American stories that have been translated to Japanese for kids, so if you prefer, you can pick up something more familiar like Sherlock Holmes. Personally, the adorable dogs and cats on this cover reeled me in, so I chose this one, and it's really helped me begin to understand the natural flow of Japanese grammar and dialogue, and I look forward to reading and translating a few pages each day and following Yuzu's adventures. Basically, anytime I pick up this book to read, I'll keep an online Japanese to English dictionary handy, and I will also write down any unfamiliar vocab words or phrases in a notebook. Then every few pages or so, I'll write myself a little summary in English just to make sure I'm fully grasping the content of the book. For the last few minutes of this video, I'm going to do my daily reading and translating of Yuzu no Dobutsu Karute, and I'll put some nice calming music in the background, so if you have something you'd like to read or study, you're welcome to work with me, but if not, then that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this little book haul, and see you next time.